welcome to the show. I'm your host, David Bigalki. With me today is a veteran of the Korean War, Bill Jajewski. Bill, welcome to the show. And
glad to be here.
If you're ready, we'll begin.
Sure.
Could you please tell us about where you were born, when you were born, your family?
I was born May 16th, 1931, in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I have 2 additional brothers and 2 sisters, and parents are dead. And what can I say? I grew up in Stevens Point, went to P.J. Jacobs High School, graduated in '49, spent 1 semester in college, and went in the beer business with my father and brother. So,
a little bit of Stevens Point history. What do you mean beer business?
We were wholesale beer distributors.
Okay.
So we had our own beer and soda distributorship, see. Called Jay's Distributing Company.
Okay. That's a little farther back than I can recall.
I can understand. It was.
So you were in business with your family members before you entered the service.
Yes.
What brought you to be a member of the service?
Well, I had a friend of mine, his name was Edward Smith, Shorty Smith we called him, who is now deceased, and him and I, we graduated in '49 together, and when I think the Korean War broke out in '50, and we went in service. We were gonna join the Marines, and we did, and they sent us both back. I had a cyst on my spine, and he had something wrong with his foot. Well, then when we came back, our parents talked us out of that, and they said, go into the Air Force or Navy. Well, Air Force was filled, so we tried to get in the Navy. Well, we went down, took our physicals. Well, my cyst was still not healed, so they sent me back, and they took him. Well, he was in for 4 years, and I got back, and I said, well, so I joined the National Guards, I think. And then after a while, I was in the Guards for a couple of years, and I applied for active duty. That's how I wound up in service, see.
Okay. You want to talk about boot camp?
I took my basic at a place called Fort Riley, Kansas. And then after that, I went to supply school at Fort Riley. And then one day, all of a sudden, they had a special graduation, so many from supply, so many from engineers and stuff like that, and all of a sudden they put us on a bus, or 2 buses, sent us, we were supposed to graduate on Monday. Well, this was on Saturday, Friday or Saturday. They sent us to Salina, Kansas. There was an airplane waiting for us, and they shipped us to a place called Beale Air Force Base in California. Then I became a member of SCARWAF, which nobody knows about or remembers. It's Special Category Army with Air Force.
Okay.
So I got in the Army. Eventually I got discharged by the Air Force. So I was SCARWAF in Korea for a year there. SCARWAF built the landing strips and maintained the landing strips for all the Air Force jets and stuff like that. That was our job.
So that's how you ended up in Korea.
Right.
Can you tell us about Korea then?
Well, we got there, and it was different. I mean, we landed there, and then they trucked us down to another place. It was a place called K6. Everything in Air Force was called K-sites at that time. I was K6, which was Pyeongtaek. K55 was above us, and then, well, for instance, K14 was Kimpo, K16 was Seoul, and stuff like that. And I was stationed in K6, which was on the LOC. And across the street, we had our Air Force, not a base, well, yeah, it was a base, and they they control 95% of all air traffic in Korea. It was the A, C, and W squadron. And then around us, we had the Army, and on the other side of the base, we had the Seabees and the Marines. We had all branches of service right on that base. So, but we got there, and it was, there's no paved roads or anything. It was a mess. And we went through these villages, and they still consider, we still had guards on gates yet, and the biggest thing that the Koreans wanted was our cement. Because all our houses were made out of paper and cardboard. Cement was like gold for them. And we had cement that we built Air Force landing strips on. So we had to keep guards on all the cement warehouses at all times, because they would confiscate it if we didn't. What else can I tell you? I got there as a supply sergeant. Well, if I sat around for a day or two, and most of the people were corporals, and there was no rank in the unit, and they made corporal, and they were ready to go home. So the company commander called me in. He said, "I see you're a supply sergeant." I said, "Yeah." He says, "How would you like to be a first sergeant?" I said, "I know nothing about." He said, "Well, you're a big enough person." He said, "I got 2 clerks to do all the paperwork. Can you try it out?" So I said, "Sure, I'll try it." And I did, first sergeant for a year. That's how I got to be a first sergeant of Scarloff. The clerks did the paperwork, and I just maintained the rest of the group. And then even when they pulled us back as a battalion after a year, I was a first sergeant until we came back to the United States. So it was different. Skarloff was Army and Air Force enlisted people, and Army and Air Force officers in the same unit. So, for instance, if you bloused your boots as an Army person, you couldn't do that because Air Force has brogans. They don't have boots as per se. So you had different rules and regulations. But they were all specialists. I mean, the Air Force people that were in the unit were all specialists in their fields. So that's why they were either engineers or mechanics or office personnel or something. They had their own specialized jobs, and that's what they did. So.
Was there combat going on in other parts of Korea?
They considered it up above there. This was 53. They had a ceasefire then, and now they had a few things happen on the 38 parallel, which is way up there. But we still had, well, they had May Day, May 1st, I think they call it May Day, and they had put everybody on alert, but in case anything would happen, see. But it was basically pretty quiet where we were at. It's a hell of a country. It's warm and damn warm in summer, cold in winter. So it's, I don't know, probably like Wisconsin, I guess.
Did you have much contact with the people except for the fact that you had to guard the cement?
Oh yeah, we had Koreans hired as houseboys, and we had, when we got there, we first lived in tents. And then our people were smart enough, they got enough material to build their own Quonsets. So they traded and bartered, and that's the whole country was trading and bartering. So we built Quonsets up there, and then we had houseboys in each Quonset where they paid because these guys were working 10, 12 hours a day out, and they didn't have time to clean up their own stuff. And the houseboys did the laundry, the clothes and stuff. And then we had Koreans serving in the dining hall facilities too, plus some of them were like a barber and a few others were on base there. Yeah, we had, and they had a lot of that worked on base too.
Mm-hmm.
So, your favorite dish is kimchi.
Is that some kind of a spicy hot vegetable?
They get cabbage. What else? Half a dozen items, and they bury it in the ground, and it ferments. It's the most horrible smelling thing in the world. Person walked in the room 40, 50 feet away, you could tell they were eating kimchi. It is, that's their Korean national dish, so it's unbelievable.
And you had some, or are you?
Oh, yeah, I've had it. Oh, God, it's horrible. Yeah, it was different, I'll tell you. It was a different tour, you might say.
So, anything else you want to say about Korea before we?
Well, I understand now they got buildings. When I got there, they were nothing but bombed out buildings and rough roads, and now I understand they're paved highways and skyscrapers and everything else. I can't visualize that. So.
Did you have a bunch of? You mentioned your friend earlier that you tried to join with. Were there other people that you met that you made friends with, or perhaps you still are in contact with?
Excuse me. Not much anymore, because they were from all over the United States. Occasionally, you might run across somebody, but there were only a couple of us from Wisconsin that were in that unit, because we were. Well, we took our basic, said at Fort Riley. A lot of guys come in from Minnesota that were friends and stuff like that, but there were just a few of us from Wisconsin, but we got split up after a couple months there, so you never seen anybody. Yeah, I made a lot of friends there, well, but lose contact after 40, 50 years. So, a lot of them have gone by the wayside, I guess, and so, what else can I say? I don't know. I got back to the States, and I guess since they've what they call disbanded Skarwaf, they have no longer. In fact, when I came here and I talked to the Veteran Service officer, he didn't even know what it was. He did look it up, though, and he found out there were things like that. So.
There was a period of time where the Air Force didn't yet exist, and it sort of became a separate branch after spinning off from the Army.
Yeah, so we were the Air Force's engineers, you might say. I imagine, I don't know if they have their own engineers now or not. They should have. They got specialists and everything else. So.
There's a couple of things we can still talk about. What did you do for recreation, or what did you do during your off time?
Drank a lot of beer. We were allowed, we had an NCO club, and then we joined the Air Forces because we were allowed I think it was a bottle of booze and a case of beer a day. And weekends, these guys would run out. I mean, geez, what else could you do? There was nothing there to do. I mean, you could probably sign out a Jeep and go up in the hills or mountains, but there's nothing up there, except Koreans.
So you didn't get to go on a leave or anything like that?
I did take one R&R in Japan with 3 of my friends, and this is ironic. I'm sitting in, it was Atami, Osaka, Japan. I'm sitting there waiting to process. There's 4 of us, 3 Air Force tech sergeants and myself, that they were in my unit, and 4 of us went on R&R, and I'm looking over, and there's a bunch of Marines sitting there, and I said to one of my friends, I said, God, that looks like a guy I went to school with, see? But I said, he joined the Navy. So, and these guys were Marines, they were sitting there. This is in Osaka. I'm sitting there looking, and I'll be a son of a gun. He looks like the guy. And it was a guy I did graduate from high school with. His name was Glenn Moberg. I think he lives in Green Bay now. And he was a medic, so he could wear the Navy uniform or the Marine uniform, corpsman. And here he was. I met him in Osaka, Japan. The next time I ran into him, we were at a Packer game in Green Bay, in the washroom, a latrine. I haven't seen him since, so
Small world.
Yes, it is.
While you were in Korea, did you have contact with your family and friends back home?
Just by letter, that's all.
Okay, you were in one spot, so it wasn't hard to find. It wasn't hard for the mail to get to you.
Right. We had what they call mail. Air mail we'd get in within a week or so, but boat mail, which were newspapers. I got the local newspaper here, and I'd come in once a month to get 20, 30 of them at one time. It was different. But the mail, yeah, that's how I corresponded. There was no telephones, no cell phones, no other communications. So
the war was ended pretty much already by the time you got there.
yes,
So you served your time, your enlisted time, and then you came back home?
I applied for duty for 2 years, see, which I did. And then I went in as a corporal, then I made staff sergeant. And then after 2 years, I got discharged, and I spent a year in the Guards. After the Guards, I joined the reserves. So I spent a lot of time in the Army Reserves. I think I had about 17 and a half years total with our active and reservists. Joined an outfit in Wausau called the 213th. 1903rd was the outfit I was in Korea. It was called EAB, was called Engineer Aviation Battalion. And then I joined the outfit in Wausau, 213 SNS, Supply and Service Company. And that took me all over the United States for 2-3 weeks at a time. We went to Fort Hood, Texas, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, McCoy, all over. Every year was a different tour for 2 or 3 weeks. They called us up in this reserve outfit. When the Cubans came to Fort McCoy, we were there. And when the Monks came to Chaffee, Arkansas, we were there for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And I come back to Stevens Point, and we had Monks living here already. But yeah, we laid the groundwork for these people coming to the United States. On the Cubans that Castro kicked out, and the Monks that came over. That was Chaffee, Arkansas was one of the 3-4 bases where they processed these people. And they sent them all over. Church groups adopted them or whatever have you. And we set up all their stuff while they were being processed. So.
Okay. How was your welcome home after you came back from Korea? Just
none.
None?
Non-existent. There were no bands when we got off the boat. And nobody was there greeting us or anything. We just we got back, and they processed us at Beale Air Force Base again, and we had 30 days, which I flew back, and then I had to report back to Waller's Air Force Base in Texas. And there was none, there was no bands, or nobody greeted you or anything, so.
Okay. I don't mean to get off the subject, but was there anything, the Monks coming here from Southeast Asia?
Yeah.
Vietnam and Cambodia?
Yeah.
Do you know anything more about why they came here? Can you?
Well, they helped, I guess they helped the Americans. This is before Vietnam now.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
or after Vietnam. Well, maybe even during that time. But they helped the Americans in Vietnam, I understand. They were like farmers and stuff like that. And that's why they came to the United States. They were not the enemy, but this was when I was in the reserves, see, this happened. So they processed them in California, they processed them in Arkansas, and a couple of them, I think Pennsylvania maybe, or there were 3, 4 places that they were being processed. But as I said, we were one of the first ones there before they came in, and we set up, well, they took over the barracks, and they separated them and made them like family housing for them. They put in plywood and made special rooms, and then they went and fed them in the mess halls, but they wouldn't eat in the mess halls. They take their food and go back to their houses. Then they were being processed, and they were shipped all over the United States. And we were living in tents out now. And they had the barracks. So, so I can't even remember the years, but that's when they first came.
So I guess you readjusted to civilian life pretty well. Yeah, you said you were in the reserve in the Guard. Anything to mention about your civilian life during all those years? Well,
just the only part you had to take off 2, 3 weeks for the military duty. So then I went back, and in fact, my brother and I were in the same unit, and they were activated in 1961. So he went with the reserves, which were based right here in this armory. And they had a couple of children, so they let me stay at home, and I ran the business. Then when I went in service, he ran it. It was, yeah, 61. They were called in for a year. This was, I'm trying to think of the name of the unit, but they spent 6 months at Fort Riley and 6 months at McCoy.
Well, we're kind of winding down now. Have you got anything else you'd like to mention, I guess, before we end the interview?
I don't know. I don't know what the heck to say. What else? I've been, I hope I adjusted to civilian life. A lot of them, I guess, don't, but it was, I said there was no fanfare when we got back. It was Korea. They didn't even consider it a war or anything at that time. And still don't, I guess, but police action. But I don't know.
Well, I guess then, thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you for your service to your country.
You know, thank you for inviting me, and I hope someone can gain some knowledge out of this interview.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.